to Twitter. My Twitter. Okay, and we're just about live. I just need to, at this point, I need to share my Twitter to you, and we will be live. And your email, your Twitter is what?
At Rob Maness.
Okay, so I just tagged you. Okay, so we're ready to go. Hi, everybody. A little technical issue, but that happens. And so, good morning. Rob Maness and I, Colonel Rob Maness, are going to be talking to the Louisiana Legislature. Terribly sorry for a slight delay, but that happens in a world of internet, Wi-Fi, and streaming, but particularly video streaming. Good morning, Rob. How you doing, Colonel?
Hey, good morning, Stephen. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. And those people who are watching us, please share on Facebook and Twitter. I just put it up on my Twitter. Had problems getting it on Rob's Twitter, but we'll take care of that. But if you're watching on Twitter, on Rob's stream or my stream, go ahead and share. Same thing on Facebook. Like our program, and let's get it out there. So, Rob, we're in the fourth or fifth day right now of the special session, and so I'm just wondering, what's your take so far?
In a nutshell, Stephen, it looks like more of the same so far. But I saw some indications last night. It looks like Taylor Barra, the Speaker of the House, and the leadership of the Black Caucus and the governor all met late yesterday, and they all came out of the meeting, which has happened before, so you have to take it for what it's worth, sounding very positive, and the Black Caucus is insisting on some tax bills, and the House Republicans have had trouble getting their own caucus to come together on what they want to do on the tax bills and also on the Medicaid restriction bills, apparently.
Okay, so what is your hope for the legislature? I mean, obviously we have I think a $994 million shortfall because of the sales tax. So if everything went the way that you wanted it, if you could dictate, to the governor and to the legislature, both Republicans and Democrats, what would it look like? What would the budget look like?
Well, if I were the governor, he's got an opportunity. The governor has got a good opportunity to do something different. And the thing that he could do differently is hold the line on spending and try to at least hold spending flat. Now, if he does that, then he's got to replace that revenue from the extra penny sales tax that's going to expire in June, that the Republican leadership promised their voters and their supporters in the House and the Senate that they would not extend that extra penny sales tax. And, it's put us as a state surrounded by states that have lower sales tax, and also as the state with the highest sales tax rate in the entire country. And on top of that, we've got a personal income tax. And the complicating factor with the personal income tax is apparently there's an automatic trigger unless the legislature and the governor take action, that the federal tax cuts that everybody was going to get as a windfall this year can automatically trigger personal income tax increases unless action's taken by the governor. And from what I'm hearing from citizens around the state, and I've had multiple phone calls and voicemails and texts this week, even though people knew I was out on the road on vacation with my family, saying, hey, if you're talking about this, please talk about this income tax issue with the federal income tax triggering a state income tax increase unless the legislature does something. So if the governor takes action and holds spending flat and works with the Republicans on what are those things that could be cut, because there are cuts still out there. Everybody knows it. There's fraud in the Medicaid system. We all know that. There are things that we can do to reduce state spending, but for now, he needs to hold it flat and figure out how he can work with the Republicans to find budget cuts that we can all agree on. And if he could do that, he'd be a hero. He would be a hero and get reelected, probably with the same numbers he had the first time, if he doesn't cause that sales tax to get extended, and he does something to not let the state tax windfall from the reductions that we already had. By just holding spending and then working with the Republicans in the regular session to find, and if it need be another special session this summer, and I would expect that at this point that there's going to be a June session, so I'll see you there. We can have a cup of coffee when that happens. But do that, work together, but it takes the governor's leadership to reach out to the Republicans, because, Barra and John Alario are trying to herd cats. It's you got more than one person you got to convince, and more than one set of ideologies. Republicans don't all share the same exact ideology, as you know. You have arch conservatives, you have moderates, you have some even slightly liberal in the Republican Party. So the governor's going to have to exercise some leadership, but he has an opportunity. He really does have an opportunity, as long as he can hold the line on that sales tax, figure out how to fix this issue with the personal income tax, and get to the point where we can actually find things that can be cut from the budget. Because here's the problem the governor faces, and the Democrats in general, and it's a problem that Bobby Jindal faced, and the Republicans are facing it now due to the smoke and mirror policies that we saw during the Jindal administration. And that is that we have a budget that our ability to raise revenue is not consistent with, and it's not coherent. So we've got to figure out how to get state spending back under control so that it matches our revenue generating capability. Now, if that increases on a consistent and steady basis sometime in the future, then we could go back and look at things that people want to add. But at this point, we just don't have that ability. And that's been the problem. That's why we've had, I think the governor said, I've called you into special session 5 times now. I hope that this time it'll work and we won't have to do it again. But he will have to do it again if he doesn't do those things. And it's his leadership that really is the key to this. He has the ability to be the Nixon goes to China kind of guy in this effort, if he will step up to the plate and take the reins.
Yeah, that's really interesting. In terms of, he's got a popularity, at least in terms of December, when Bernie Pinsenter ran his poll, about 63%, which I think is really very strong when you consider that John Kennedy's at 40, was at 49%, and Cassidy at 48%. Gives you some kind of perspective, I believe. So he would argue, wait a minute, I had this popularity. Chances are that right now I'm more popular than perhaps my competition, and we have cut. He would say, and this is what he did say during his speech. He said, "Look, ask the teachers, ask the hospital workers. We have cut. We've cut roughly $3 billion. We've raised. We've had to. That was the difference in terms of." Actually, let me take that back. We've had a combination of cuts and say revenues, taxes, $3 billion because of what happened with Bobby Jindal, and also the oil revenues, actually falling short as it did, maybe 1/3 of what it was. So that I think that's what his argument is. Go ahead.
I can see your point there, and you're right. He has very strong numbers. That's why I believe that he can be the Nixon goes to China individual and leader in this effort. But if he doesn't do that, he'll see those popularity numbers fall. He's coming up for re-election here in 2019. There's already efforts on the partisan Republican side that have been doing social media advertising for quite some time now, with over $1 billion in the coffers. I think it's called the Truth in Politics effort in the state of Louisiana, that's been attacking him incessantly, whether he deserves it or not. He gets attacked by them, and that is the issue I think he faces. While he does have good numbers, he's got to remember that Republicans are the ones that put him in that office and that are keeping those numbers that high. And unless he exercises leadership, and this is a great opportunity for him to show his leadership, and we know he's a good leader. We've seen him in a crisis. We've seen him in floods and hurricanes, in all kinds of situations where he does the right thing. He makes solid decisions. This one area of policy, especially tax policy, is the one weakness that I see that he's had. I've criticized him for that. You know, if he could come out of his first term with a tax system that was based on consumption, eliminated the income tax completely, eliminated corporate income taxes, and at the revenue base that and spending bases that are the right thing to do for the state of Louisiana, our future would be very, very bright. And his future would be very, very bright. And I think he's got an opportunity to do that, but he's got to exercise the leadership and step away from the liberal policies on tax and spend just a little bit. I don't think he's got to step that far away. And I think he'd be very surprised at how much support he would get in the legislature if he would just take the reins and exercise strong leadership and put real tax reforms and real spending reforms and budget reforms out there that people can chew on, come to a compromise on. Because there are people, even on the most conservative side, that if he proposes a sound tax policy that they can live with, that will get this state consistently growing again. You know, we have these ups and downs where we grow for a bit based on oil revenue or a company proposing to come in or coming in with new jobs, and then it flattens out because of our tax and spend policies. And if he could just do that and get everybody to the table and use his leadership and his bully pulpit and those numbers of 63%, I think he's got a great shot at getting this problem addressed that we've been dealing with for years and years and years now.
Okay, I'm looking at Facebook and I see that Kenneth O'Keefe says, drain the swamp. Is there a swamp in Baton Rouge?
Oh, yeah, there's a swamp in Baton Rouge. Absolutely, there's a swamp in Baton Rouge. Look, I spent the last session working as a citizens lobbyist last year, and you could see that the wealthy lobbyists come in and they get people to change their minds. You can see it every day. Just to go sit in the committee rooms and listen and watch people move around. And if you know who the players are, you can tell. And of course, there's always something going on behind the scenes, and money talks, to be honest with you. You know, a citizens lobbyist like me, we're not up there spending a lot of money. We're just up there trying to talk and convince from a principled perspective the legislators into doing what we think is the right thing and best for the citizens of Louisiana. But the big money interests, whether it's a Democrat big money interest or a Republican big money interest, it doesn't really matter. There is a swamp there, and they tend to get their way over the interests of the people of Louisiana, just like what happens at the federal level. They tend to get their way in the interest of themselves and their policies as opposed to what's right for the country.
You mentioned about getting rid of the income tax. So what would we replace it with? I mean, obviously property tax is very, very low.
Yeah, our property tax is very low. I like the Texas model. I've spent many years in both states now. And we could take another look at property tax, but also make a really strong consumption tax policy. Take a look at the federal fair tax model that's been proposed and is and it grows in support every year. I mean, it's been up there for years. If you take a look at House Bill 25, I think was the last number that was assigned to the fair tax bill. There are ways to keep a consumption tax from being overly regressive on the poor, and I think that there's a possibility that we could take a look at that. You've got to take a look at if you eliminate the corporate income tax, you also eliminate the freebies. You know, freebies like property tax, freebies, and those kinds of things, so that every company is incentivized to come here, and we can compete with states like Texas who don't have an income tax. But they still pay property taxes. They pay consumption taxes just like everybody else. And I think that's what there's an opportunity to take a look at that. And there's been some talk about it. I know that Lobby's president, Mr. Waxpack, Stephen Waxpack, has talked about a sales tax only type system. I know Jindal proposed it, but really didn't put a lot of fight in the effort. But I think that there in majority, and if you had a governor that was willing to take a leadership role, like Mr. Edwards has the ability to do because of his numbers, then you have the possibility of something like that happening.
I see that Brian Angel says, did you propose eliminating all personal and corporate taxes? And I know you just responded to that. Anything further that you want to add?
No, I think it's very clear. I mean, you would need to do that in order to make our state competitive.
But you would have to get rid of some of the freebies, is pretty much what you're saying.
Well, absolutely. With the taxes go away, the incentives that have been put in place where we basically pay companies to come to the state of Louisiana, we wouldn't need to then.
So like maybe a decade ago, I think maybe 14 years, actually longer than that, I came up with the idea of the digital media law back in 2002, and we got it passed in 2005, and then Governor Jindal and Steve Mulray expanded it, and that actually is growing technology companies here in the state. That would be one of the, I guess, incentive programs that might have to go a different route. That's different than, say, the film industry. Would you be in favor of getting rid of, say, the film industry tax incentives in the digital media and some of the other tax incentives?
Well, again, if we eliminate the corporate income tax, then along with those incentive programs would either have to be looked at very closely, or you have the opportunity to eliminate them altogether, because it levels the playing field, and the companies would be incentivized and be saving those dollars that they were getting in the incentive programs anyway.
Now, in terms of the Medicaid, I saw that there was a discussion about it yesterday, and one of the legislators said that she thought that the real, say, Medicaid fraud was coming, not from the people, but, from the providers, that they're charging more. So if you take away, some of the benefits, if you make them pay more in terms of deductible, if you make them work, say, 20 hours or more, which I think actually is a good idea to have them work, to the extent that they can. But are we being unfair then to the Medicaid recipients, either those who really would like to find more work, but just, they cannot, or those that are just really disabled?
Well, Stephen, as you know, the devil's in the details, man. If I'm not opposed to work requirements for Medicaid, but we have to make sure that we don't put a work requirement on somebody that's elderly that can't work, or somebody that's permanently disabled that doesn't have the ability to really go out and get a job because of a physical or a mental disability that they've been born with or had all their lives. So we have to be very careful how we structure the policy, but I don't think it's a bad idea to put work requirements on Medicaid. It's been done in other states, and it has been successful in cutting some of the costs down. What I'm talking about is only able-bodied people that have the ability to go out and get a job should be have this work requirement levied upon them. Now, as far as being fair and not look, if the policy doesn't look at providers and those kind of folks at the same time, then that is unfair because nobody makes those companies and those corporations that run large medical facilities inviable. I mean, they're not perfect. There are people that have less than good intentions everywhere in the world, and that's just the way man's nature is. So you have to have a system that guards against that fraud too, and the tendency for the larger dollars to occur is in the area of the providers, because they deal with very large sums of money, and these capabilities need to be looked at very closely. And we need to have a policy that matches that counter fraud effort, just as much as we are thinking about a policy of putting a work requirement on the recipients.
So another question by Brian Angel, if we says, are we a state that punishes people for being poor? Let me just add something to that. Obviously, the sales tax hits the poor and the low income people more than in terms of they're not being able to afford the extra penny or the extra quarter penny, as is now being discussed. Is it fair that we go ahead and we impose the extra, say, 1/4 penny permanently, or maybe extend the sales tax another 2 years, the full penny? Is it fair to those people who cannot afford it?
No, under our current system of a combination of income taxes and sales tax, it's not fair. I don't disagree with the person asking the question. We've got to be fair. We have a large number of people in poverty, especially children in poverty in the state of Louisiana, and we've got to make sure that we are pushing for policies that takes that into consideration. Even something like a consumption tax only system and property combined with property taxes system needs to be looked at to make sure that it doesn't overly impose on the folks that are already in poverty and prevent them from climbing out of poverty, because that's the whole idea behind these things, is creating conditions so that they're not just livable, but people are able to prosper and get out of poverty. I would like to see our state be the most prosperous state in the union, and we have the natural resources and we have the industries like the film industry that we need to make sure that we're enacting reforms and policies that match up with that. But at the same time, we have to consider those that are already in poverty. When you look at children in the city of New Orleans area, and I think it's this last number that I saw last year was about 45% or more that are in a poverty situation. We have to be very careful of that. But we can do that. You can have conservative policies that actually do not hurt those that are poor. And that's the whole idea of why a lot of us are conservative, is because we think the policies are better for growing a prosperous population and an economy.
So I'm going to read some of these responses. Let's see, Billy Rosenthal says, all this gun needs to go. We are 2 cents in change higher than California's sales tax, Colonel. Gary Curtis says, we're driven the companies who were once here contributing away with taxes were built Houston. Bradley Galata, actually Mary Drawn says, when I have vets that can't buy food because they have to decide between that and meds, that's a problem. Bradley Galata says, Mary, and bear with me because there's a lot of conversation going on, but I wanted to throw this out, because I think that, Facebook allows us to be able to show exactly what they have to say. So Bradley Galata says, Mary, we're talking about state taxes and politics. State reps only make like $16,000 a year. At the federal level, I can't disagree. It shouldn't be a life long gold mine of benefits, but that's a drop in the bucket of the federal budget. So a lot of comments. Which one you want to choose?
You go ahead and pick, Stephen, and we'll take whichever one you like.
Okay, the last one I think is really interesting. That's something that Jeff Carrere and I talked on his radio show. As you know, WGSO 990 AM, he does from 7 to 11. You're on there quite a lot. So we're talking to the legislature and we're legislators, and we talked about on Tuesday whether or not they're underpaid. As you remember, there was a big stink about 2008 where they raised their own salaries. But if they're looking at every year going in there and spending 5-6 months of their life up there in Baton Rouge, do they deserve more of a raise, or do you think that since they volunteer for it and they campaign for it, then they should live with what it is?
Absolutely not. I don't think that they should get a raise. For one, based on the metric of good performance, they haven't been able to resolve the budget shortfall issue, and they didn't take control of spending and budgeting and appropriations during the Jindal years to prevent this from happening. They haven't been able to get the governor to the table to get a proposal for solid tax reform so we can actually get our budget under control and stop overspending what we're capable of pulling in. And the only way to do that is to exercise leadership. And I don't believe that they should get a pay raise, number one, because of that. Number two, I think one of your other questions was about full-time legislators, if I heard it correctly.
Yeah.
And these guys and these men and women are volunteers. They are part-time legislators, and they have full-time lives outside of that. And if they would do a better job, they wouldn't have to spend so much time up in Baton Rouge, and they need to get the job done. So absolutely not. I don't believe they should get a pay raise. The pay that they do get is plenty enough compensation for folks that have other jobs and those kinds of things. So let's get the job done. And then you don't have to spend so much time at Baton Rouge.
There's a lot of conversations going on your page, Rob Maness, on your Facebook page, and I really encourage everybody to go there. We're streaming this right now on Iron Liberty, on Rob Maness's Facebook page, on my Facebook page, on Twitter. So we have a lot of different streams going out. Pretty fascinating technology, isn't it?
It is fantastic technology.
Yeah. From a just out of curiosity, I know that you've done a lot of streaming. Where do you think that, say, the political world can go in terms of using some of this new technology? I know this is separate from the legislature, but I'm just wondering, and how can we make it more, say, government friendly, so that that we can communicate more directly with our legislators and be able to do so that they do what say the people want them to do.
Well, one of the things that legislators can do individually is establish their own page. You can do polling of your constituents. You can micro target your constituents that are on places like Facebook and Twitter and other social media platforms. You can do it simultaneously. It doesn't take a lot of technology, or it doesn't even take a full-time IT or web service individual. You could hire somebody part-time, or God forbid, you could learn to do it yourself like you and I have. And, that reminds me of, just to make an announcement, Iron Liberty News Radio, its funding ended in January of this year, but Iron Liberty News Web TV broadcast will be coming back. We are in the throes of producing the Iron Liberty News Web TV broadcast. It will be live as soon as we get all the technical and engineering and production challenges worked out, and we will be back up here on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and it will be a live 30-minute show every Monday night. And we when we get the challenges of getting callers in, we will be taking callers, and we'll probably extend the time out to a 1-hour show, and then we'll broadcast that out.
Okay, I see that
once
Ron.
a week once we're up on.
Yeah, and Ron Chason says Rob Maness is the man. So I'm sure he's one of your listeners. So tell us what is that you're doing now? You just took a vacation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am still involved in politics. We took about a week and a half vacation, went up to Washington, D.C. and Virginia and the Smoky Mountains, and just got back day before yesterday. So we've been taking some time off from a very challenging year last year. We have, as I mentioned, started production of Iron Liberty News web TV broadcast that'll be coming out soon. We continue to be active on social media and continue to be active in politics. I gave a personal endorsement to Austin Peterson, the grassroots conservative and liberty-minded candidate in the Missouri Senate race that's taking on Claire McCaskill and an establishment Republican up there. And we're looking at a couple of House races that we're going to be involved in. And my company, Iron Liberty Group, also provides services to some of these campaigns if I decide to get involved in them. So we're working on that, and we continue to get out there and grow the company, the Iron Liberty Group. As I mentioned last year, I did some lobby work for a citizens action group out of Shreveport. That was a Tea Party-based network, a statewide network called the Louisiana Power Coalition. We may do some more of that type of work and provide that service again, and just try to stay involved in politics, and mostly just to help people do the right thing, get the word out from folks. Folks that are my supporters are generally average citizens. They're not power people in politics or business and those kind of things. So I get a lot of information at the grassroots level that may or may not get out through the mainstream media, and I want to use my company to get that word out too.
I see that there's another post here. I think it's a really interesting one, and this might be something that maybe you and I can work together on using the web. Lawrence Manuel says, is there a class on writing bills that could then be entered into the reps and the senators? That's an interesting concept.
He didn't
say it, but I'm throwing this out, an online class.
I don't know if there's an actual class on it that's available to the public, but there are all sorts of training that is available, and you can go on to the legislators' websites and take a look at the bills that are being pre-filed and those kinds of things. A lot of it is boilerplate, and it's not that difficult to learn how to actually write that. But better yet, get in touch with your representative and your state senator and ask them if you can help them, and volunteer to help them write bills, and you can learn something from them. There are a lot of folks that have been in office for a while that know how to do this business. They have very good staffers, and they would welcome the opportunity to work with especially a constituent to help write legislation and get it through the voting process.
How can people, say, help you in your endeavors?
You can go to my Facebook pages. The first one is at COLROBMANESS. We have about 233,000 person following on that Facebook page. In a good week, it can reach over 1 million viewers and readers. You can go to my Twitter page. My Twitter account is at ROBMANESS, and follow us, like our tweets and share those tweets and those kind of things. Same thing on the Facebook pages. Also, for Iron Liberty, we have the Iron Liberty News pages on Facebook and on Twitter. It's the same handle. It's at Iron Liberty News, all one word. You can type that into your search bar on Twitter or Facebook, and the account will come right up. Please go follow that. We're building audiences on that. They're not quite as large as the Facebook pages that have Rob Maness's name, so we want to build that audience transition that audience over to those pages so that when the news pages are active, you're not missing something by only following at Rob Maness, because we don't put every news item on the
One last question dealing with the legislature. We've talked about the budget, the fiscal problems. Is there any, say, piece of legislation for the regular session that you would like to see filed, or that you know of that you would like to push?
Well, this is a non-fiscal session, so obviously the special sessions focused on that. I mentioned the tax policy. I think the most important thing that we need to do is two things on fiscal policy, and that's in these special sessions, if we do another one this year especially, and that is implement tax restructuring and reform along the lines of a consumption tax idea, and eliminate these income taxes and get us competitive with states like Texas again. But at the same time, you have to have budget reform. We can't keep spending more than we're taking in. We've got to figure out and find, and that's where compromise is possible. Find the right things that we need to cut from the budget so that we stop this overspending and putting ourselves in this situation. So these poor legislators that aren't getting paid very much already don't have to go to Baton Rouge 5 or 6 times a year. They only have to go once. So that would be the two big things. Now, I would like to see some things happen. I would like to see a reapproach to the monument situation that was defeated last year. Now that some of the passion has maybe ebbed out of that discussion, maybe we can have a real debate. You know, I went to Scotland with my family over the Christmas holidays, and here's why I think we should readdress that and try to protect these monuments, even ones that we don't like or that might offend us. You know, I went to Scotland, and I'm at Edinburgh Castle in Scotland, in the capital of Scotland, and there's a statue of William Wallace and a guy named Robert the Bruce that is bracketing the gate going into Edinburgh Castle. And I'm in the United Kingdom, remember, and those two men were people that fought wars of independence against the English, but their statues are there. They haven't been ripped down because they offend the British and those kind of things. And I think that we should really readdress that, because it's important for not just people like me that care about the history, but it's important for our country that we move forward as a culture that can come together and overcome the past instead of putting the sins of our fathers and mothers on each other and not being able to move forward. So that's one that I would like to see happen.
Okay.
I would also like to see a protection of religious freedom bill taken up and passed, and because we give people exceptions, except for in one area. We give folks exceptions that have deeply held religious beliefs, and that is Christians that don't believe that gay marriage is the right thing to do. We need to be able to give folks an exception so that you don't withhold the service to people that are in that category that have a right to that service, but the individual is not forced to go against their personal beliefs. And we do that all the time with other groups. And I still don't understand even today. And we tried to do that a couple of years ago with Representative Mike Johnson's bill, right. But it was defeated pretty handily. But again, I think that people that are objective, now that the passions of the issue may have ebbed a bit, maybe we can have a really civilized debate on those two things and come to an agreement on how we can approach that everybody can live with.
I wouldn't count on any civility. This is Louisiana, we have to remember, and the United States, which is probably as uncivil right now with everything that's going on. So let me just do a little, homework here, and that is, those people who are watching, please sign up for BayouBuzz.com, my newsletter, BayouBuzz.com. That's the publication that I publish. And this content will be up there on BayouBuzz.com, including the entire video and segments and excerpts. So we take the transcripts and we take excerpts that we think that the readers really would like to read, and we put it up as an adjunct to this video. Those people who want to follow me, please go ahead and do so. Those people want to join our Louisiana Politics group. It's a Facebook group. There's no civility in that at all. I will tell you, and I'm the moderator. I mean, seriously, I try hard, but you know, these are really troubling times for all of us, for sure, on the national level in particular, and no matter what side that you're on. So later today, we have Christopher Tidmore and Ronna Gray. We're going to be talking at 4 o'clock. Every morning we're doing a show 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock, 8 in the morning, 4 o'clock. Colonel Maness, would love to have you back again. Maybe we can talk about the Christian or the religious liberty or some of the very specific issues rather than a more broader as we're doing right now. So, listen, thank you. I think that covers just about everything. Why don't you give it's Iron Liberty News?
Yeah, you can go to a Facebook page at Iron Liberty News, and please follow and share that. Get your friends to like that and follow it. And on Twitter at Iron Liberty News. And of course, my personal page is Twitter is at Rob Maness, and Facebook is at COLROBMANESS. And that's the big one. If you like that one, you're going to see everything pretty much that I put out personally at COL Rob Maness on Facebook. And that has quite a bit of reach.
Well, make sure you tell everybody, you know, those people that you can reach to share this video, so we can get even more of a reach, and then we can have more discussion about legislative issues, Louisiana legislative issues, and other issues, and have a really good discussion, which I think, you know, hopefully this program will help provide. So. Listen, hold on now, Colonel Maness. I really appreciate your being with us this morning. Just hold on. I'm going to press a couple of buttons and say goodbye to everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, really. So just bear with me. I'm going to... And so everybody go share, like, and thanks a lot for participating with us.